These are just a few of the fun projects that you can make for your kids with my book Half-Year-Old Kids, published by Search Press. There's all sorts in here. There's toys and games, there's some educational bits and pieces, lots of storage, a backpack somewhere to keep your pens and your pencils, games like fishing and decorations for around the kids' bedrooms as well. So yes, and you do see monkey skittles on there, how to make the skittles, how to make the balls, something to snuggle up to at night time with this cosy hot water bottle cover, and even a bookend that you can store bits and bobs in, and a pencil case where it's a lion's mouth that zips closed to keep your pens in place. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a version of the little witch's hat. Now, as it's coming up to Halloween, these are quick and simple to make. You can personalise them, add spiders and spiders' webs and creatures, make them in any colour and any size that you like. And apart from you having fun making them, your kids are going to love wearing them as well. So here's how we do it. This is the little witch's hat that is actually in the book, but I wanted to show you some variations, and the one that I'll show you how to make now is a little bit larger than this one, so you really can adapt them and make them really personal. So this is obviously made out of felt. This one's got a longer spike on it, and it's made out of fabric this time, and you can see I've found some pumpkin little buttons and I've just glued those on and decorated it with a net bow at the back again. I think the net gives it a little bit of glamour somehow. If you have any little shapes, these are just some gold stars, you know, the kind of things that you throw on the table at Christmas time as decorations. And I had some black feathers which were actually out of another hat. This is a twisted piece of ribbon, and this time I've put the black and white ribbon down the back. And if you're going for the black witch, then why don't you go for the matching white witch? And I think these will make lovely little fancy dress outfits as well. Now this one is quite glamorous because I've glued on some flowers around here. Again, you can see I've got the net on the back and the black and white stripe, so these two go together absolutely perfectly. Now the hat that I'm going to make it for you now, I'm going to make in navy blue, purely so that you can see what I'm doing in here. And I've cut my circles. In your book it'll tell you to cut 6-inch circles. These are actually 8-inch circles, so you can see it's going to be much bigger. So that's the bottom of the hat. It'll be a little bit floppy as well. You can put some card or something like that to stiffen it if you wish. On the other side I've cut a hole right in the centre, and that measures 3 inches around, and that's where my cone's going to go. So for the cone, this is a corner, if you like, cut out a corner from a circle, but you know what I mean, you cut out a corner of a circle, a quarter of a circle, and this circle would have been 12 inches. But basically what you need to do is to make sure that when you curve this around, and it's easy to do with felt, then it's going to sit inside that hole that you've cut out perfectly. So if you're making a different size, you don't have to, you know, measure and go into all of the mathematics of the circumference and all that kind of thing. Just physically put it in there and make sure it matches up. So first thing I'm going to do is to sew together the sides of the cone. I was going to say right sides together, but felt doesn't really have a right side together, so just fold this in half, and I'm going to use quite a small stitch on this and just sew down the side. You could hand sew this. Felt is an ideal medium to work with for hand sewing because it's not going to fray. So if you've got little ones that are going to make these up for themselves, this is a perfect kind of fabric to use. So I'll turn this the right side out and just push out the point there. I've got a knitting needle that I like to use to do these things. So don't use the scissors in there because you'll just have a hole in the end of your hat. Like so. And then I'm going to hand sew this cone inside the hat like so. You could machine stitch that, but I find it's a little bit fiddly. So I'm just using an over edge stitch and simply sew all the way around the edge. I'm not even going to pin this in place. Felt is quite forgiving in the way that your stitching doesn't have to be perfect because it's a non-woven fabric. Stitches kind of sink into there, and also you can kind of stretch it a little bit. So if you get to halfway around sewing the hat in and you realise that either the hole's too big or the actual cone is a little bit too big, you can kind of pull it so that it meets perfectly. Now when I turn this over, I could decorate with, I like net. I think, like I said earlier, it does give it a little bit of glamour. But you could decorate this with all kinds of ribbons or trims or sequins and beads. You know, really go to town with it. In your book, I'll show you how to just put a little bit of stuffing or toy filler inside. This is quite a thick felt, so it will stand up on its own. But if you wanted to do that, you know, just push a little bit inside the cone to keep it standing upright. So round we go, and again, I'm not worried about my stitching being absolutely perfect here. I'm keeping the stitches at about 1/8 of an inch apart, so that they're quite close together. And I can see that's going to fit beautifully as it comes round to the other side. You can actually buy felt with prints on, can't you? So maybe you can find one with, I don't know, Halloween cats, or maybe there's one even out there with pumpkins on it. Anything orange and black kind of looks Halloween, doesn't it? But I think the shape of the witch's hat is quite distinctive, so it doesn't really matter what colour or what patterns you use. When I go a little bit crazy and have a zebra print witch's hat, they're still recognisable as witch's hats because of the shapes. Okay, so I'll just finish off where I started, so I'll knot this thread off. There. So that's how we're looking. Then I'm going to plonk this on top of the second side. Again, if you want to put a little bit of toy filler in there, then do so. Shan't on this one. And then I'm going to sew all the way around. I can go a longer stitch now on my sewing machine. Now, because this is felt, and again it doesn't fray, when you've sewn the two pieces together, if you give a little bit more of a seam allowance, you could even pink the edges with some pinking shears, make it a little bit spiky. If you're going to add any kind of trim, like maybe a rick-rack, you could pop that in between the two layers as you're sewing around, like as I'm doing that now. But this is a really, really quick way of making a really rather sweet little hat. So, you know, for witches or wizards' outfits for that matter, if you're going to make a really big hat, they can be quite difficult to make. But this is really, really easy. So that's the hat kind of done. So now all I'm going to do is decorate it. I like it when it folds over a little bit. It looks almost like a cowboy witch's hat somehow, doesn't it? Right, now I've got a long piece of net that I'm going to make a nice big bow to go on the back, and I'm going to glue this on with a hot glue gun. You could sew if you don't, or you know, use a felt glue or a strong fabric glue or something like that, but you know, it's only a little hat that's not going to go in the wash, so it doesn't matter if you're going to start adding a little bit of glue. So that's going to go at the back like that, and keep the tails quite long, and I'll chop those off at a jaunty angle. Like that. Then we'll have, I've got a piece of ribbon as well, which I'm just going to, I'll put that underneath the net actually, so that's going to dangle down the back as well. And I found just some odd little flowers, so those are going to decorate around the front like that. Very glamorous witch, this one. 3 going to be enough? Put some little ones in there as well. I've got some little lilac ones and blue ones which look quite sweet too. Oh, there's even a yellow one. Okay, so those can go on last. So where the seam is at the back here is where I'm going to put the ribbon and the net. So blob of glue on here. I'll pull the stringy bits away afterwards. careful if you're using one of these glue guns. They really get hot if you haven't used one before. Just beware. And they do leave these stringy bits of cobwebby like glue which you can just pick off afterwards, which is actually quite satisfying. Right, and it dries really, really quickly. So another blob of glue on top of here. And then my bow goes on the back. And then around the front is where I was going to put my flowers. And I think just on one side, I'm not going to go all the way around with those. I think it looks a little bit more elegant just to keep them kind of asymmetrical like that. Some little ones as well. If you're a little bit worried about the glue getting near your fingers on smaller items, then use tweezers. Little blue one. And just one more lilac one, and I think that's done. There. Now the final thing to do when I've picked off all of that glue and this glue is dry is to put this onto a headband. So I've got a pale blue one, so it kind of matches, and I'm just going to stick it just onto one side of the headband like that, so it's at a jaunty angle. So again, big blob of glue across here, so that will take a while to dry because it's so thick. And right in the middle of the hat, that goes on there. And we just hold that to dry. Almost there. It is quite a heavy hat actually. I'm going to put a little bit more glue just on the side. That's it. Bits of glue again. There, and when that's dry, that's finished. So all I need now is a little witch to go trick-or-treating for me.